I swear this all started as the most innocent, boring thing in the world. Studying for our midterm. Nothing about that night was supposed to be memorable. It was raining, I was exhausted, and my tiny college apartment smelled faintly like burnt microwave popcorn because I'd messed up a snack just before my study partner, Eli, arrived. Eli and I weren't best friends or anything, more like academically convenient. We'd been paired for a semester-long project back in September, and after realizing we worked surprisingly well together, we kept studying as a duo. He was the quiet type. Dark hair, soft voice, always wearing some oversized hoodie that swallowed him up, but he was sharp. Organized. The kind of guy who color-coded everything and reminded me when assignments were due. The kind of guy the first wasn't supposed to develop a crush on. But of course, I did. Anyway, that night the rain was coming down sideways, and Eli showed up completely drenched, despite the 2-minute walk from his dorm. "Dude," I said, stepping aside as he shook water off like a dog, "did you walk through a waterfall?" "I lost the battle with my umbrella," he muttered, holding up the mangled, wind-broken remains like it had personally betrayed him. Water dripped from his bangs onto his cheeks, and despite myself, I felt my stomach twist. He looked good like that. Stupidly good, and I hated that I noticed. "You're gonna freeze," I said. "Toss that thing and go change your shirt or something. I have a hoodie you can borrow." He gave me a tired smile. "Thanks, sorry for the mess." I shrugged it off, pretending his smile didn't do something to me. Happens. While he changed in the bathroom, I set up our textbooks and notes on the coffee table. My apartment was small enough that everything was basically in one room, and I kept glancing toward the bathroom door like an idiot, my heart doing that annoying thumping thing I couldn't control around him. When he finally came out wearing my gray hoodie, the one that was too big even for me, I nearly forgot whatever I'd been pretending to study. "It smells like you," he said casually, dropping onto the couch next to me. I choked on my own spit. "Huh?" He blinked. "Laundry detergent. Calm down." "Right. Laundry detergent." Totally what he meant. We studied for hours. Rain hammered the windows, the thunder rolled in slow waves, and at some point we gave up on the coffee table and spread out on the floor. Textbooks open, laptops glowing, the two of us lying on our stomachs side by side. Around midnight, Eli yawned for the 10th time and pushed his glasses up his nose. "I'm hitting the point where everything looks like ancient Greek." "It is ancient Greek," I said, pointing to the page. "Oh." We both cracked up. But the laughter died quickly when the power flickered, then cut out completely. The apartment went pitch black. "Ah," Eli whispered. "Was that supposed to happen?" "Nope." Another thunderclap shook the window. "Well," he said, voice small, "that's not ideal." He stayed closer to me now, like unconsciously shrinking toward the nearest warm thing, which just happened to be me. I tried to play it cool, but every accidental brush of his arm had my brain short-circuiting. We lit a candle on the counter, enough to cast a dim glow across the room, and I checked the time. Past 1. The storm wasn't letting up. "You should head back before it gets worse," I said, even though I didn't want him to go. He peeked toward the window, where rain was slamming hard enough to blur everything. I'd get soaked again, and also possibly electrocuted. He wasn't wrong. "You can crash here," I said before thinking. "I mean, if you want." He hesitated for a second, then nodded. "I'll take the couch," he said. I should have left it at that. Should have avoided any situation where we'd be lying within 2 feet of each other. But my mouth betrayed me. "The bed's big enough for 2. He looked at me, really looked. And instead of laughing it off or calling it weird, he said softly, "Okay." My stomach dropped. What the hell had I just agreed to? We got ready for bed in awkward silence, the candle flickering shadows along the walls. I tried not to act weird, or stare, or think about what it would be like to have him sleeping beside me, close enough to touch. We climbed into my bed, him on the left, me on the right, a safe distance, a responsible distance. "This isn't weird, right?" he asked into the darkness. "No," I lied. "Totally normal study partner behavior." He snorted quietly. We lay there listening to the rain, both pretending to be relaxed. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. And just when I thought he was asleep, I felt it. A shift. A brush. Then his hand, warm, hesitant, slid against my waist and moved lower. My breath caught instantly. He froze, and everything in my body went still, because his hand wasn't supposed to be there, and he knew it. And still, he didn't pull away. His hand didn't slide like in the movies. No dramatic sweep, no slow-motion bravado. It was small and cautious, like he was testing the physics of the world and waiting to see if anything would break. First, it rested at my waist, thumb lightly tracing the seam of my boxers through the thin cotton of my pajama pants. Then, one breath later, it drifted lower, palm flattening against the stripe of my hip, fingers inching toward the place where my body stopped being casual and started being private. I wanted to jerk away. Every alarm bell in my skull started blinking neon. "This is wrong," it shouted. "This is your roommate, your study partner, the guy you high-five when you survive finals week." But my body told a different story. My chest opened, like someone had unzipped something inside me. I felt warmth bloom where his hand touched me, ridiculous and immediate. His hand paused. I could feel the tension running along his arm, the little tremor of someone waiting for permission they weren't sure they deserved. The room was quiet except for the rain tapping the window and the candle, its flame half melted and throwing soft light across his face. He looked like he was about to apologize, or confess, or both. "Eli," I started, voice thin. My mind tried to build a sentence that sounded calm and adult and reasonable. "We, shouldn't," he swallowed. I could feel it, the tiny shift in his throat. "You didn't have to say no," he whispered, but the sentence came out strained and unsure, like he was fishing for permission disguised as mercy. There it was. Honesty. Not the showy kind you tell on stage, but the raw, awkward kind that makes you want to hide and also hug him at the same time. For a beat, I saw every small thing I'd noticed about him over the semester. How he chewed his lower lip when thinking, how he always left the fridge organized, the way he hummed when he found a song he liked. Suddenly, those details rearranged themselves as clues in a map I'd been too embarrassed to read. "You sure?" My voice sounded ridiculous, even to my own ears. It came out smaller than I meant. He nodded. No bravado. Only a tired, earnest, "Yes. Yeah. I've wanted to do that for a while. Sorry. If it's weird, I'll leave. I can go." That last part should have been the end of it. He could have stood up, pulled his hoodie back on, and resumed the safe orbit of roommateness. Maybe tomorrow it would be funny in an embarrassing way. Maybe I'd spend the next week avoiding him in the library. Those options should have sounded reasonable. Instead, my whole body wanted to close the space between us. Everything that was sensible evaporated in the warm candlelight. "I don't want you to go," I blurted, the words surprising me with their urgency. I hadn't planned to be brave. I hadn't planned to be anything but rational. But there it was, the exact truth. The thing that made my palms sweat and my throat dry and my chest do that stupid little flip when he smiled. Eli exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath for years. "Okay," he said. "Just tell me if I cross a line." "Don't," I told him, barely a whisper. "Don't stop." He moved a fraction of an inch, and the world narrowed to the two of us, to the warmth of his hand on my hip, the heat of his thigh against mine, the small, ridiculous electric tingle that crawled down my spine when his fingers brushed the sensitive spot above my hip bone. We didn't make a scene. No dramatic pulling of jackets, no fevered passion that wrecked the bedspread. Instead, it was small and precise, a hand that learned the map of my body like a student tracing a diagram for the very first time. He leaned in, not to kiss immediately, but close enough that I could feel his breath against my temple. His lips found the corner of my mouth in the most gentle, expert way, as if he'd practiced kissing in the privacy of his head and had finally found the courage to try it for real. It was both clumsy and perfect. He tasted faintly of coffee and the rain. I tasted him like I'd been waiting for a flavor I didn't know existed until that moment. When we did kiss properly, it was slow. Neither of us rushed. No stumbling into urgency, no clumsy fumbling with buttons. We explored the small vocabulary of mouths and hands, learning the syllables of each other's breath. Eli's hand slid from my hip to the small of my back, thumb drawing lazy circles that made the hair on my arms lift. My fingers found the back of his neck, curled into the soft hair there. The world outside the apartment fell away. The thunder, the blackout, the midterm looming in 2 days. In the candlelight, we rearranged ourselves into something that made sense in that imperfect, fragile hour. We paused occasionally, both to check for consent and because the intimacy surprised us into sudden vulnerability. Both of us asked the quiet, clumsy questions people ask when they're trying to be sure. Are you okay? Do you want this? I can stop. Each time, the answer came back in whispers and small touches and a certainty that grew, not like a wildfire, but like a tide, creeping higher and higher, until it decided the shore belonged to it. He laughed once, soft and disbelieving. God, I'm terrible at subtlety. No, I said, breathless. I don't want subtle. We didn't cross boundaries without checking them. We moved with frequent pauses for permission, the kind that made everything feel safe in a way most situations didn't. That timidity, the mutual checking and rechecking, somehow made what we were doing feel less questionable and more honest. Eventually, exhausted and shaky, we collapsed against the pillows. His arm draped over me, heavy and warm. I felt like I'd been walking on a cliff and someone had finally put a hand in mine. Sleep came in fits. I woke once in the night with my face buried in the crook of his shoulder, the rhythm of his breathing anchoring me. For a surreal second, I let myself pretend the world had always been like this. Small apartment, storm at the window, the two of us folded into each other. Morning, though, felt terrifying. The candle had burned out. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, drawing bars across his face, across the sheets. He was still asleep, mouth slack, eyelashes resting on his cheek. There was a tiny smudge of something, coffee, on his chin that made me grin stupidly. What would we be today? Study partners? Roommates? Awkward coworkers at the campus cafe when we saw each other in class? I imagined a dozen futures, some sweet, some catastrophic, and couldn't decide which one terrified me more. He stirred, blinking awake like a person surfacing from a dream, and when he saw me, he smiled, a real smile that made my chest hurt. For a terrible moment, I worried I'd done something reckless. Then he reached for my hand in the quiet, squeezing once. Morning, he whispered. Morning, I answered, and the word felt enormous and new. We lay there, hands clasped between us, a fragile island of normal in a sea of what-ifs. We had crossed an invisible border, and now we were in the awkward, thrilling territory of what came next. We still had to study. We still had a midterm in 48 hours. But first, we had to figure out how to be ordinary people again, how to laugh without the electricity underneath, how to pretend the world hadn't tilted slightly and then righted itself around the two of us. Coffee? I asked, because sometimes the most practical things are the most grounding. He nodded, and for a ridiculous second we both fell silent, listening for the safe, ordinary sound of the kettle warming up. The thing no one warns you about when you finally cross a line with someone you've been low-key crushing on for months is the morning after. Not the dramatic version. No ripped clothes, no lipstick smudges, no guilty sneaking out. No, it's the quiet. The soft, too bright morning quiet, where you're suddenly hyper-aware of everything. Like how his hair was sticking up in 3 different directions. Or how the sheets still smelled like us mixed together. Or how the curve of his shoulder looked different in daylight. Less study partner, more someone I suddenly know way too well. Eli stretched beside me with a low sound that made my brain short-circuit again. He blinked slowly, adjusting to the morning light, then rubbed one eye with the back of his hand in this ridiculously cute, half-asleep way. Did we actually? He murmured. I huffed a laugh. Unless that was the world's most vivid fever dream. He made a small, embarrassed noise and buried his face in my pillow for a second. Then he peeked up at me, cheeks warm and pink. He said, sorry I made the first move. Sorry? I repeated. Eli, you touched my hip like it was a bomb you were defusing. That was the most polite first move in history. He groaned and flopped back onto the bed. arm covering his eyes. I didn't plan that, I swear. I just felt you next to me and… He trailed off. It was stupid. I nudged his cheek with my knuckles. It wasn't stupid. He didn't answer. But he didn't pull away either. I pushed myself up, grabbing the hoodie he'd borrowed last night and tossing it gently onto his stomach. Come on, I said. Coffee. He sat up slowly, pulling the hoodie on. It hung off his shoulders, sleeves swallowing his hands, making him look smaller, softer. It was unfair how good he looked in my clothes. My kitchen wasn't fancy. 2 mismatched mugs, an ancient coffee maker, a microwave that made aggressive noises when you pressed the buttons. Eli leaned against the counter while I brewed the coffee, arms folded, watching me with a half-hidden smile. This feels weird, he finally said. Yeah, I admitted, pouring the steaming coffee. But like, good weird, he nodded. Yeah. We sat on the couch again, knees touching this time, just lightly. Casual. Except not casual at all. My brain kept replaying last night in broken flashes. His hands sliding lower, his breath on my neck, the quiet way he asked, "Are you okay?" I cleared my throat. So, are we going to talk about it? He stared into his coffee. Probably. That sounds like a no. That sounds like a I don't want to mess this up, he said, finally meeting my eyes. My heart did a weird, warm drop. I set my mug down, leaning back. You think you messed something up? Not yet, he said softly. But I don't know what you want, or what this is. Honesty. The good kind. The kind that stings a little. I took a breath. I don't know what it is either, but I don't regret it. At all. He let out a breath. Relief, maybe. Or disbelief. I don't regret it either, he admitted. I just didn't think you'd ever… His brows furrowed. Want me like that? What? Why wouldn't I? He shrugged, looking suddenly smaller. You always seemed comfortable with me. Like I was safe. I didn't want to screw that up by… He swallowed. By wanting more. That sentence hit deeper than anything from last night. I shifted closer without thinking, our knees pressing fully together now. He didn't move away. You didn't screw anything up, I said quietly. You did the opposite. He smiled then. Not the tired, shy one. The real one. The one I'd seen maybe twice all semester. So, he said, voice tentative, what now? I opened my mouth to answer, but right then the power came back on with a loud electronic pop, startling both of us. The lights flashed. My ancient fridge hummed to life. A ringtone I'd forgotten I'd left charging lit up the room with a notification explosion. Eli snorted. Wow, thanks, universe. But the interruption didn't break the moment. If anything, it grounded it. I turned back to him. Now, I said, we study. Because we're failing that midterm if we don't. He laughed. A warm, real, relieved laugh. Yeah, good point. But, I added, tapping his knee with mine, after the exam, we talk. He nodded, looking almost shy again. Deal. He finished his coffee. I finished mine. The storm had ended. The morning light was brighter now, clearer, cutting across the apartment in soft gold stripes. Nothing looked different. But everything felt different. We spread our notes back across the coffee table, organizing chapters like we always did. Except this time, our shoulders kept brushing. Our legs stayed pressed together. He'd tuck his hair behind his ear and blush every time he caught me watching him. And when he leaned forward to grab a pen, I saw the faintest mark, my mark, on the side of his neck. Nothing dramatic, nothing scandalous. Just a tiny pink imprint of the night we'd shared. He didn't hide it. I didn't look away. Studying after everything that happened felt like trying to read, with fireworks going off inside my ribs. Every time Eli leaned closer, my brain forgot what chapter we were on. Every time he tucked his knee tighter against mine, Heat crawled up my chest in ways absolutely no textbook had ever accomplished. We managed to review 2 chapters before either of us cracked. It wasn't me. Eli closed his book, pressed a hand to his forehead, and let out this low, miserable groan. "I'm not retaining any of this," he admitted. "Because you're tired," I offered gently. "Because I'm thinking about last night," he muttered, and yeah, that derailed me instantly. "Oh," I said, very intelligently. He looked sideways at me, cheeks flushing again. "You're thinking about it too." I tried to deny it, couldn't. Yeah, kinda hard not to. He pulled his legs up onto the couch, sitting cross-legged now, facing me fully. There was a brief, flickering moment where he looked younger, more uncertain than I'd ever seen him, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing and rewinding everything back to strangers. "I don't do this," he confessed quietly, "like, I don't usually make a move on people." "I figured," I said with a small smile, "considering the way you nearly apologized mid-kiss." He covered his face with both hands. "Please erase that whole moment from history." "No chance." He peeked at me through his fingers. "I'm being serious. I don't know how to be, whatever last night was." "Neither do I admitted. "We're learning." He lowered his hands slowly. "Together?" I nodded. "Together." His shoulders eased. Something unknotted inside him. We went back to studying. Or tried to. But every time one of us shifted, our hands brushed. When I reached for a highlighter, he caught my wrist by accident. When he leaned over to check a formula in my notebook, his breath tickled the side of my jaw. If someone had recorded the entire study session, the footage would look like 2 people doing calculus while trying very, very hard not to kiss. At some point, the rain clouds cleared, and faint sunlight spilled onto the coffee table. Eli watched the light reflect off my mug before speaking again, voice soft. "You know what scares me?" I shook my head. "That you might wake up tomorrow and regret it," he said. God, that sentence hit like a punch. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't fishing for reassurance. He was genuinely afraid. I leaned in slightly. Not enough to crowd him, just enough that he could feel my presence warm on his skin. "I'm not going to regret it," I said. He held my gaze, searching, testing the truth of it. Then he breathed out slowly. Relief, again. That same fragile, quiet kind I'd seen this morning. We reviewed one more chapter before we hit a wall. Eli yawned so hard his eyes watered. "Okay," he said. "We need a break. My brain is melting." "I can make food," I offered. He perked up. "You? Cooking? Is that safe?" I threw a cushion at him. He dodged it with annoying ease. 20 minutes later, the kitchen smelled like scrambled eggs and toast. My emergency, not failing college today, breakfast. Eli sat at the table scrolling through notes on his phone, still wearing my hoodie, still looking devastatingly soft and domestic in a way that made me forget how to function. "Here," I said, setting a plate in front of him. His eyes lit up. "You're spoiling me. That's just eggs." "I know," he said, grinning. "Still counts." We ate in comfortable silence, the sunlight warming the small kitchen. Every so often his foot brushed mine under the table. Little touches, tentative but intentional. And then, halfway through eating, he froze. "What?" I asked. "My phone," he said, eyes widening. "I have a tutoring session in an hour. And I look," he gestured at himself, "like I got hit by a soft, gay tornado." I laughed. "Well, you kinda did." He swatted my arm. "Shut up. You gonna tell him why you're late?" I teased. "Absolutely not." He grabbed his backpack, pulled the hood up over his messy hair, and hesitated at the door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sunlight caught on the side of his face, and I took in the small details. His faint freckles, the nervous way he pressed his lips together, the way he kept glancing back at the bed like he was replaying everything too. "Hey," he said quietly, "can I, come back after, to study again?" "Of course." "And maybe talk?" he added, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah, definitely." He exhaled, smiled. That small, real one again. Then he surprised me. He stepped forward, hooked a finger in the drawstring of my hoodie, pulled me close, and pressed a quick kiss to the corner of my mouth. Not a full kiss. Not a dramatic one. Just enough that my breath caught and he knew it. "See you in a bit," he whispered. The door clicked behind him, and for the first time all morning, I had to sit down because my knees weren't entirely stable. The apartment felt weirdly empty after Eli left, like the space he had occupied still hummed with the outline of him. His half-finished coffee sat on the counter. His backpack had left a faint indentation on the couch cushion. My hoodie, which he'd worn out the door, was missing, and somehow that felt more intimate than anything we'd done the night before. I tried to study while he was gone, but every page blurred with memories. His breath on my neck, the way he whispered, "You didn't have to say no," the way he smiled when I said I don't regret it. My whole damn brain had become Eli-shaped. He came back earlier than expected. I didn't hear the knock at first. I only noticed the shadow through the frosted glass. When I opened the door, he stood there, cheeks pink from the wind, hair messy from the hood of my hoodie, clutching his binder like he was afraid it would blow away. Hi," he said, voice uneven. "Hi." He stepped inside, and the first thing he did was take a deep breath, like he was walking into someplace safe. "Your tutoring session was short," I said. He winced. "I wasn't exactly present." I raised a brow. "Thinking about something else?" He gave me a look that made my stomach flip. "Someone else." That felt like a punch and a hug at the same time. We settled on the couch again, but the energy was different. Charged, thicker, heavier in the best possible way. Eli tucked his legs under him, turning toward me completely. "I was thinking about this morning," he said softly. "And last night." "Me too," I admitted. He bit his lip. "I want to talk, but I don't want to ruin anything." "You're not going to ruin anything," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to me. "Okay," he breathed. "So, I should tell you something." My pulse quickened. "Yeah?" He fiddled with the cuff of the hoodie. My hoodie, pulling the loose thread back and forth between his fingers. "I'm not great at figuring out feelings," he said. "I'm slow at it. Slower than most people. Sometimes I don't realize what I want until it's practically smacking me in the face." "That's okay," I said gently. "And, there have been moments this semester where I wondered if I liked you," he continued. "But I told myself it was just because we study well together. Or because you're nice. Or because you don't make fun of me for color-coding everything." "I would never," I said, smiling. He huffed a soft laugh. "But yesterday, and last night, and this morning, I don't think I can pretend anymore that it's just friendship." My heart dropped, in the best possible way. "So you do like me," I said, just to hear him say it. He inhaled shakily. "Yeah, I think I do." The think didn't bother me. It felt real. Honest. Raw in a way people rarely are. I reached out slowly, brushing a knuckle along his wrist. "I like you too." He let out a shaky breath, like he'd been holding it for hours. "But," he added quietly, "I don't want to mess this up, and I don't want anything to be rushed. I really, really don't want to do something wrong." "You didn't," I said. "You haven't." He nodded, absorbing that. Then he whispered, "Can I sit closer?" God, the way he asked, so careful, so gentle, it made something inside me melt. "Yeah," I said. "Come here." He shifted closer until our knees touched, then our thighs, then he leaned into my shoulder, head resting there like he belonged. I wrapped an arm around him without thinking, and he melted into the touch, warm and grounding. For a long time, we didn't talk. We just sat there, his breath soft against my collarbone, my fingers absent-mindedly tracing little circles across his upper back. The sunlight through the window caught in his hair, making it look softer than usual, and he let out a quiet, content exhale that made my chest tighten. It wasn't a dramatic, cinematic moment. It was quiet, tender, and far more intimate than last night's frantic warmth. Eli shifted slightly, turning his face into me. "This feels good," he murmured. "It does." "And safe," he whispered. I swallowed. It is. He tilted his head up a little, eyes searching my face. Can I kiss you again? I didn't answer with words. I leaned in slowly, giving him a moment to pull away if he needed to. He didn't. His hand slid lightly along my jaw, guiding me in as our lips met. Warm, slow, unhurried. No desperation, no rush, just soft, deliberate pressure. A confirmation instead of a question. When we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. Okay, he whispered. I definitely like you. I laughed softly, brushing my thumb along his cheek. I got that. But then his expression shifted slightly, somewhere between shy and mischievous. So, he murmured, do we talk about what we are? His eyes flickered. Or do we find out first? My pulse kicked hard. He wasn't asking about labels. He was asking if he could stay, if he could explore. If last night didn't have to be a one-time moment of impulsive bravery. But before I could answer, he slid his fingers between mine, slowly, as though he wasn't sure if he had the right, and whispered, I kind of want more time with you. I squeezed his hand back. Then stay. His shoulders dropped with another relieved breath. He leaned into me again, entirely trusting, entirely warm. And I realized something. He wasn't nervous about the midterm. He was nervous about us. And now that he knew I wanted him to, he wasn't pulling away. Not even a little. Eli didn't move from my side for a long time. Not out of nervousness, not out of hesitation. He stayed because he wanted to. Because that's where he felt right. Every few minutes he'd shift slightly, adjusting himself, but he always leaned back against me. Always touched me again. His hand on my knee. His shoulder against my chest. His fingers brushing mine. A quiet kind of intimacy. New. Warm. Dangerously easy. At some point he spoke again, voice low and thoughtful against my collarbone. You ever feel like you're stepping into a new version of your life? He murmured. And you don't know if you're ready for it, but it still feels like the right thing? I laughed softly. Yeah, actually, right now. He made a quiet, almost relieved sound. Then he sat up slightly, staying close, his face just inches from mine. Because that's how I feel, like my life shifted last night. Or maybe it was shifting for a while and I didn't notice, I swallowed. Since when? He hesitated. Then shyly, since October, I blinked. That long? He nodded, cheeks flushing. I noticed it during that first late-night study session. You fell asleep on your notes. Your hair kept falling in your face, and you looked so annoyed at your own exhaustion that He broke off, burying his face in his hands for a second. Never mind. No, I said, gently tugging his hands down. Tell me. He looked up at me through his lashes. I thought you were cute. My chest tightened in a way I wasn't prepared for. Eli. He shook his head quickly. I didn't mean to think that. I tried not to. I just liked being around you. You made me feel calm. And not a lot of people do that. I touched his cheek lightly, thumb brushing the faint warmth there. You make me feel that way too. That's why it scared me. He smiled at that. Small, soft, real. Then he leaned in again. Not to kiss me, not fully. Just close enough that his forehead rested against the side of mine. We should actually study, he whispered. But I don't want to stop this. Me neither. And I don't want this to be just a moment. Like something we pretend didn't happen when finals are over. We won't pretend, I said, firm. I don't want that either. He nodded gently, our foreheads brushing. For the next hour we actually studied. We read, reviewed, tested each other on concepts. But the whole time, our ankles stayed tangled. His thigh pressed against mine. He would look up from his notes and catch me staring, then flush and look down again. Every few minutes he'd whisper something like, I still can't believe last night happened, or you look different to me now, or the one that almost melted me into the couch. I didn't know how much I wanted this until I got to touch you. After a while he stretched, arms reaching above his head, hoodie lifting just enough to expose a sliver of skin. He froze when he caught me looking, a heartbeat of tension stretching between us. Then he lowered his arms slowly, eyes fixed on me. You're staring, he murmured. You noticed. He slid a little closer. Then a little more. His knees touched my leg. Do you like seeing me? The question wasn't teasing, it was insecure. Vulnerable, I answered honestly. Yeah, I do. Eli's breath caught just enough for me to hear it. He looked at my lips again. He had that habit now, studying them like they held answers. Can I kiss you again? He whispered. You don't have to ask every time. I know, he murmured, leaning in. But I like asking. This kiss was slower, deeper, more certain than the morning's careful touches. His hands slid up my arms, then settled lightly around my neck, fingers curling just enough to send a shock down my spine. When we pulled apart, foreheads resting together again, he whispered, I don't want to leave tonight. Then don't. He hesitated, searching my face. I mean, I don't want to leave your bed tonight. My pulse tripped over itself. You sure? I asked gently. He nodded, cheeks flushing. I slept better with you than I have in months. The simplicity of that cut straight through me. He wasn't talking about anything romantic or physical. He wasn't talking about fooling around. He was talking about falling asleep next to me. About safety, warmth, home. Then stay, I said again, softer this time. He shifted closer until he was basically on top of me, curling against me like it was second nature. I wrapped my arm around him and he tucked himself under it like he belonged there. We should finish the last 2 chapters, he mumbled into my chest. Yeah, I said, brushing his hair back. We should. We didn't. We lay there instead, breathing together, his fingers tracing lazy lines across my ribs. And the quiet moment we shared didn't feel like a mistake. It didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like a phase or a fluke. It felt like a beginning. Something slow, something real, something we both wanted. And when he finally whispered, Don't let go yet, I tightened my arm around him. I'm not going anywhere. We didn't even try to pretend we were going to get back to studying. Eli lay against me like he'd been doing it for years, like his body already knew the shape of mine. His breath warmed the fabric of my shirt, slow and steady, and every so often he'd shift just enough to get closer, his knees sliding against mine, his fingers curling into my side, his head tucking itself beneath my chin. It was ridiculous how natural it felt. After a while, he lifted his face slightly, chin resting on my chest, eyes looking up at me in this soft, searching way. You okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, I whispered. You? He nodded, but there was something in his gaze, something nervous and unspoken, so I brushed my fingers through his hair and waited. He swallowed. Can I say something without you freaking out? Try me. He hesitated. Then, I liked last night, he said softly. Obviously. But I liked this more. This part. Just being here with you. His fingers traced a tiny line across my ribs, feather-light. This feels real, he whispered. Something in my chest sank, then settled, like a stone dropping into water and finding the place it was meant to land. It is real, I told him. At least it is for me. His breath shivered. Not from cold, just emotion. He shifted again, sitting up a little, knees touching mine. When he spoke next, his voice was steadier. I don't want this to be confusing, he said. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen when midterms are over. I don't want to be unsure of what we are. Okay, I said, matching his tone, so let's figure it out. He bit his lip. I don't want to rush or label it before we're ready, but I want to keep choosing this. Choosing you, if you want that too. I didn't hesitate. I do. His whole body exhaled, like I'd been holding him up without realizing, and he could finally relax. Good, he whispered. We shifted again, closer, then closer still, until his forehead touched mine. His hand slid up my jaw to cup my cheeks gently, carefully, like he was holding something he wasn't sure he was allowed to keep. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a question this time. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't tentative or experimental. It was slow, intentional, certain. The kind of kiss you give someone because you're choosing them, not because you stumbled into them by mistake. His thumbs brushed my skin. My fingers curled in the fabric of my own hoodie, still hanging loose on his frame. The kiss deepened only slightly. Not rushed, not needy, just full, warm, confirming. When we broke apart, our breaths mingled in the small space between us. Eli, I whispered, because saying his name felt like grounding myself. He smiled. A soft, half-shy smile that tugged at something deep in me. Yeah? You can stay tonight, I said. Not because of the storm, not because of the blackout, because I want you to. His eyes softened even more. I want that too. He didn't move away. If anything, he scooted closer, sliding sideways until he was half in my lap, half curled against me, arms looping loosely around my waist. His head dropped onto my shoulder like he'd found his new natural position. You're warm, he mumbled into my shirt. Is that the only reason you're clinging to me? No, he said instantly, then quieter. No. His fingers found mine without even looking, lacing them together like he'd been doing it for years. We sat like that for a long time, sun setting, room dimming, campus noises drifting faintly through the window, just holding each other, bodies fitting together in a way that didn't feel like new territory, but like returning home. Eventually, when the sky outside turned that soft, dusky blue, Eli whispered, "Should we move to the bed?" My pulse jumped, but not from fear, from anticipation, from something warm and steady that had nothing to do with lust and everything to do with closeness. Yeah, I said. He stood, tugging me up with him, fingers still twined with mine. We walked to the bedroom together. Not rushed, not stumbling, just together. He climbed into the bed first, then held out a hand for me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I slid in beside him, wrapping my arm around his waist, pulling him gently into the space where he fit perfectly. He settled there easily, head under my chin, legs tangled with mine, one hand resting over my heart. "You sure you're comfortable?" he murmured. "More than comfortable," I said. He breathed out, long and quiet. His fingers brushed the fabric of my shirt, barely there. "I think I like you more than I realized," he whispered. I kissed the top of his hair. "Good," I said softly, "because I really like you too." He hummed a small, warm sound and nuzzled closer. We drifted toward sleep like that. Slowly, comfortably, bodies molded together, his breathing syncing with mine. No storm outside this time. No flickering lights, no excuses. Just us. He wasn't just staying the night, he was choosing me. And somewhere between his heartbeat and mine, everything settled into place. I woke to the feeling of warmth. Not sunlight, though morning light was filtering in through the blinds, but warmth pressed against my chest, my stomach, my legs. The solid, heavy kind. The kind that breathed. Eli. He was draped over me like he'd melted in his sleep, head tucked beneath my chin, one arm flopped across my waist, his fingers curled against my hip as if he'd grabbed hold in the middle of the night and never let go. For a moment I didn't move. I didn't even breathe too hard. I just watched him sleep. His lips were parted slightly, hair messy, lashes brushing his cheeks. My hoodie had twisted around him in a way that exposed one pale shoulder, the fabric slipping off like it belonged to someone who lived here, someone who belonged here. I'd never seen him look so peaceful. I didn't want to wake him. But after a minute he stirred, stretching slowly, rubbing his cheek against my chest like a sleepy cat. He made a soft sound, somewhere between a groan and a hum, and blinked his eyes open. He looked up at me, still half asleep. "Hi," he whispered. God help me, that one sleepy syllable almost ruined me. "Hey," I murmured, brushing a thumb across the back of his shoulder. He nuzzled back down for a second, face hidden in my shirt. "I didn't mean to cling this much." "You can cling as much as you want," I said, and meant it. He smiled against my chest. Not a big smile, just the small, shy curl of someone genuinely happy. Eventually, he pushed himself up, hair sticking out in every possible direction. He rubbed his face, squinting at the light. "We overslept," he said. "No, we didn't," I lied. "We had no alarm." He checked his phone anyway. We definitely overslept. Worth it, I said. He flushed, adjusting the hoodie around himself. Yeah, it was. He looked at me a moment too long, like he was memorizing something, and then he leaned down and kissed me. Soft, lazy, morning slow. The kind of kiss that tasted like comfort and newness, and don't pull away yet. When he finally sat back, he whispered, "Last night, and this, all of it. I'm really glad it happened." Me too, I said. He hesitated. So, what happens now? I thought about it. Not the complicated version. Not the labels or the worries or the what-ifs. Just the simplest truth. We take it slow, I said. We figure it out. Together. He nodded, a relieved softness washing over his features. Okay. I like that. And, I added, tugging the hoodie's drawstring so he felt closer, we keep doing this. He grinned, hiding it against my shoulder. I can do that. We eventually dragged ourselves out of bed. He stole another kiss on the way to the kitchen. Then another while I was making coffee. Then another, just because he walked past me. He stayed close the whole time, fingers brushing mine, hip bumping my hip, like something had shifted in him overnight and he didn't want to put the distance back. And I didn't want him to. While we ate breakfast, he sat next to me instead of across, thigh pressed against mine, quiet and content. And when he finally packed up to leave, just to shower and grab fresh clothes before our next study session, he stood at the door with that same shy confidence from the night before. I'm coming back tonight, he said, blush rising again. For studying, and for you. For both? I teased. He nodded. Yeah, for both. Before he stepped out, he leaned in for one more kiss. Not rushed, not flustered, certain. When he pulled back, he whispered, "Don't forget I like you, okay?" "Don't forget I like you more," I said. He rolled his eyes, smiling. "Impossible." And then he left. But right before the door swung shut, he poked his head back in. "Oh," he said, "and I'm keeping your hoodie." Then he disappeared down the hall. I stared at the closed door, stunned and stupidly happy. He didn't just stay last night. He didn't just fall asleep in my arms. He chose me. This morning. Tomorrow. And the slow, quiet, real thing we were building together. And damn if that didn't feel better than anything else that had happened.